You know, it's the strangest thing. Just this morning, I was sitting by the window with my tea, chamomile, always chamomile since the doctor told me coffee was no longer my friend, and I caught the faintest smell of cinnamon and baked apples. Lord have mercy, it was like somebody had lit a candle straight from my childhood. Just one little whiff, and I was back in my mama's kitchen, 1961, a rainy October afternoon. The kind where the light was soft and golden, and everything felt like it was wrapped in a cozy quilt. Mama's apple pie was on the windowsill, steam fogged in up the glass, and I remember sitting there watching the rain, thinking that the world was a safe and good place. Isn't that something? A smell can take you back further than a photograph ever could. And I'll tell you what, that smell didn't just bring back the pie. It brought back her. My daughter. Now, I know you weren't expecting me to say that, but that's the truth. That scent just opened the floodgates, and I reckon that's why I'm talking to you today. You see, there's a story I've kept buried deep down in the corners of my heart. One I never thought I'd say out loud. But I've been sitting with it for so long, holding it close like an old photo you keep in your Bible, the edges worn and smudged from too many touches. And lately, something in me's been whispering. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to speak it into the world. She was my only child, you know. I named her Lila Jean, after my grandmother and her sister, both long gone now. When she was little, oh, she had the brightest eyes you've ever seen, like morning dew catching the sunlight. She used to crawl up into my lap with her blanket and whisper secrets only I could hear. And I'd think to myself, this child is my reason, my blessing. But life, well, life's got a funny way of changing the story when you least expect it. And Lord knows I never saw it coming. Not from her. Not from my baby girl. Back in my day, we didn't talk much about hurt that comes from your own blood. We just kept on, made do with what we had, and prayed over the rest. But some wounds, they don't heal with just time and tea. Some wounds keep whispering in the quiet moments when the TV's off and the house is too still, and all you got are the ticking of the clock and the memories you'd rather forget. And that's where I've been living. For years now, tucked between silence and sorrow. So why now? Why tell it? Because that smell, that simple, silly smell of apples and cinnamon, it didn't just take me back to Mama's kitchen. It brought me to the night Lila emptied out my bank account, signed over my house, and left me sitting on a bus bench with nothing but the clothes on my back and a jar of jam I'd made for her birthday. Lord have mercy, I never imagined that kind of betrayal. Not from her. But it happened. And it changed everything. So, if you're sitting there listening and you think this is just another story from an old woman with too many cats and not enough teeth, well, maybe you're right. But maybe, just maybe, this story might settle somewhere in your heart. 'Cause what I'm about to tell you, it's not just about losing a house. It's about losing a piece of yourself and somehow finding the strength to stitch something new out of the scraps. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, back when Lila was still my sunshine. Before the world turned cold. Before I learned what a heart can survive. I grew up in a little town you've probably never heard of, Willow Creek, down in southern Missouri. Just a dot on the map, really. Back then, you could walk from one end of Main Street to the other in the time it took to hum a hymn, and everybody knew who made the best cornbread. Miss Ruthie, no contest. We had one grocery store, one church, and one schoolhouse that smelled like chalk, old wood, and little boy sweat. Land sakes alive, it wasn't much, but it was home. And home felt safe. I was born in the spring of '43, just as the lilacs were blooming. Daddy said I came into the world squalling like a baby calf and didn't stop talking for 3 years straight. I reckon I had a lot to say, even back then. We didn't have much, We didn't have a pot to pee in, truth be told, but we made do with what we had. Mama grew tomatoes and canned green beans all summer long, and Daddy worked odd jobs, a little carpentry, a little farming, whatever he could to keep us fed. He had hands like sandpaper and a voice like warm molasses, and when he'd hum Amazing Grace on the porch at night, you'd swear the stars leaned in to listen. I was the middle of 5 kids, 3 girls, 2 boys, and Lord help us, there was always someone crying or Logan or spilling something. Our house was loud and cluttered and full of life. As a girl, I believed the world was good. Not perfect, mind you. We had hard winters and harder times, but good in the way that made you feel like tomorrow could always be better. I thought kindness was the most important thing in the world. That if you loved people hard enough, they'd love you back. That's what Mama taught me. She'd say, "Edie Mae, you just keep your heart soft and your prayers steady." That's how we do it in these parts. And I did. I kept my heart open like a window in May. I remember running barefoot through the fields, the grass tickling my ankles, the sun warm on my back. Summers were long and sticky, with sweet tea in jelly jars and lightning bugs in mason ones. My sister Lula and I would sit under the willow tree and make necklaces out of clover, whispering secrets about boys and dreams, and what kind of women we'd become. I thought I'd grow up, marry a kind man, have a baby or 2, and stay in Willow Creek forever. I never imagined I'd leave, or that leaving would leave such a mark. I met Henry when I was 16. He was older, with a smile that could make a girl forget her own name. He wasn't from town. He'd come down from Kansas looking for work, and Lord, did I fall hard. He had big hands and a gentle laugh, and when he held me, I felt like maybe I'd finally found my place in the world. We married young, like most folks did back then, and for a time, life felt like one of those country songs where the porch lights always on and supper's always hot. That was when I had Lila Jean. I was barely 20. And when they placed her in my arms, wrapped up like a little burrito, pink and wriggling, I swear the whole world went quiet. I remember looking down at her and thinking, this is it. This is my reason. I thought if I just poured all the love I had into her, it'd be enough to keep her safe, keep her close. I didn't know yet how the world works. I didn't know yet that love can't always stop the cracks from form in the floorboards. Back then, though, I believed in goodness. I believed people came back. That no matter how far they wandered, family was like a magnet always pulling you home. And maybe that's why the hurt runs so deep now. 'Cause when you build your whole life on faith and trust and long Sunday suppers, it's hard to understand how it all gets taken away. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let me tell you about Henry and how the cracks started showing long before I ever noticed them. It was the summer of '59, hotter than the hinges of hell, and I remember it 'cause the peaches were ripening early and the whole county smelled like sun and sugar. I was 17, working part-time down at Miss Della's diner on Route 17, the kind of place where the coffee never stopped pouring and the screen door slapped shut every 2 minutes. I just finished the lunch rush, apron stained with ketchup and sweat, when he walked in. Henry Ray Thompson. I didn't know his name then, of course, just saw a tall boy with dusty boots, jeans that looked like they'd seen better days, and eyes the color of sweet tea in the sun. He sat at the counter, ordered a slice of pecan pie and a glass of water, and smiled at me like he'd known me forever. I'll tell you what, my heart did a little somersault right there behind the register. I couldn't explain it, not then, but something in me just shifted. Now, I'd been around boys before. There was Tommy Sims, who used to leave wildflowers on my porch, and Dale Collins, who asked me to the county fair, but they were Willow Creek boys. I knew their mamas, their habits, even their report cards. But Henry, He wasn't from around here. He had that look like he'd seen things, been places, and still chose to sit in our dusty little diner and ask me how my day was. Land sakes, I didn't know what to make of it. I just remember wiping down the counter a whole lot more than necessary, trying not to stare, but failing miserably. Turns out he was staying with his uncle on the old Miller property, just up the road from where we used to pick blackberries. He'd lost his daddy the year before, and his mama had taken sick not long after. Said he was looking for work, for quiet, for something new. I reckon we were both searching for something that summer, though neither of us could have named it back then. He started coming in every day, same booth by the window, always a piece of pie or a biscuit, always a smile that made my knees feel like they were made of warm butter. We'd talk about little things at first. Weather, music, how he used to fish with his old man. But then it got deeper. He told me about the night his mama passed, how the house felt too quiet after. I told him about my dream of teaching kindergarten, how I'd always wanted to show kids the magic of words. He listened, really listened, like every syllable mattered. And Lord, that did something to me. No one had ever made me feel quite so seen. I remember one evening, just before closing, the sky turning pink like it had been dipped in rose water. Henry waited for me out front, hands in his pockets, looking nervous, which was unusual for him. He said, "Edie Mae, can I walk you home?" And though it was just a few blocks down the road, something in his voice made my heart flutter. We walked slow, not saying much, just listening to the cicadas and the gravel crunching under our feet. And right there, under the willow tree in my front yard, he leaned down and kissed me soft, careful, like he didn't want to break whatever spell had brought us there. I didn't sleep much that night. Kept replaying every moment in my head, wondering how a stranger could feel so familiar. And even though I couldn't quite explain it, my heart knew before my head did. This boy was gonna change my life. Looking back now, I realized that was the first crack in the foundation I thought would never break. Not a bad crack, not then, just the start of something new. Something that would grow, stretch, and eventually strain. But at the time, I was just a girl in love, dreaming about wedding dresses and front porches and a future too big to hold all at once. And Lord, I held it all so tight. Maybe too tight. I suppose things started to change right after Henry and I got married. It wasn't some big moment, like you see in the movies, no slamming doors or shouted words echoing down a hallway. No, it was slower than that. Like a draft in the house you can't quite find but feel settling in your bones. We got married in the fall of '60, just before the leaves turned, under a lace arch Daddy built himself and Mama decorated with white ribbon and sprigs of rosemary. It was simple, beautiful, and I was so sure we'd have the kind of life folks write songs about. But life's got its own rhythm, and sometimes it plays in minor chords. Not long after we said, "I do," Henry lost his job at the feed store. It wasn't his fault, they were cutting back, and he was the last one in, so the first one out. But Lord, the shame he carried. I remember coming home from work and finding him sitting on the back step, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. He didn't talk much those days, and when he did, it was clipped, like every word cost him something. I tried to hold him up, I did. Took in extra shifts at the diner, pawned Mama's brooch to pay the light bill, made Stu stretch for days. But you know, a man's pride can be a heavy thing. And Henry's was no exception. We moved in with his uncle for a spell, a crusty old man named Vernon who smelled like pipe smoke and pickles and had opinions on everything, especially women. "A woman's place is in the kitchen and out of the way," he'd mutter when I walked by. I'd smile tight and keep my mouth shut, but inside I burned. I was young, and I still believed if you just loved hard enough, You could fix anything. Lord, I didn't know yet that some men and some wounds don't want fixin'. Then came the baby, Lila Jean, my sweet girl. She was born early, too early, and I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, watching machines beep and nurses whisper and praying to a God I wasn't sure was listening. Henry never came to the hospital after the first night. Said it made him feel useless, sitting there watching doctors do what he couldn't. I told myself it was nerves, that he'd come around, that he just needed time. But when I came home, arms full of tiny diapers and worry, he wasn't the same. Neither was I. That's when the doubts started creeping in. Not loud ones, just little whispers. What if he regrets marrying me? What if I'm not enough? What if this is my fault? I didn't say those things out loud. You didn't. Back then, women didn't have feelings that weren't welcome at the supper table. You just put your lipstick on and served the beans, no matter how empty you felt inside. I'd sit in the dark rockin' Lila, listening to the wind rattle the windows and wonder how a life that began with so much hope could feel so cold already. My mama tried to help, bless her. She'd come by with cornbread and wash the baby clothes, never judging, just humming old hymns like a lullaby for my soul. You just hang on, Edie Mae, she'd say, kissin' my forehead. The Lord don't waste nothing. Not even tears. I wanted to believe her. I did. But sometimes her words felt like a coat one size too small, comfortin', but not quite enough to cover all the ache. I started seeing things I didn't want to see. The way Henry would go quiet when I asked about money. How his hand twitched when he was angry. How he stayed out later and later with friends I never met. And the worst part? I didn't know if it was him changing or me. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't strong enough, or pretty enough, or patient enough. That's how the fear creeps in, not as a shout, but as a slow, poisonous drip. Back then, I still hoped it was just a rough patch. That things would smooth out. That love would be enough. But deep down, I think I already knew. Some storms don't pass. Some just settle in and make themselves at home. I remember the exact moment it happened. Funny how your mind holds onto something so sharp and clear, like they're etched in glass. It was a Tuesday, ordinary in every way. The kind of day where you fold laundry, stir the beans, maybe catch a rerun of Matlock if the baby's napping. But that day, Lord help me, that day cracked my world wide open. I was standing at the sink, peeling potatoes, watching the late light pour in through the curtains, golden, soft, and I heard the front door creak open. Not slam, just open quiet. Too quiet. My heart knew before my head caught up. Henry was supposed to be at work. Hadn't been bringing home much lately, but I told myself that was just the economy. That's what he said anyway. Times are tight, he'd mutter, pouring himself a drink. But when I stepped out into the hallway, my slippers hushing against the linoleum, I saw Lila standing there, 16, arms crossed, her face hard like stone. Behind her was a man in a dark coat, carrying a clipboard, looking at me like I was already gone. "Ma," she said, not mama, not mom, just ma, cold and flat. "You need to sign these papers." I'll tell you what, I didn't understand at first. Thought maybe it was school forms or some silly thing. But that man with the clipboard, he told me I no longer own my house. That the title had been transferred. My bank accounts? Empty. He even showed me the withdrawal slips, signed in my name, only it wasn't my handwriting. I looked over at Lila, my baby girl, the one I rocked through colic, who used to wrap her arms around my neck and whisper, "Don't ever leave me," and she wouldn't meet my eyes. I remember how quiet it was, like the world had stopped ticking. The clock on the wall, the one from Mama's kitchen, had stopped ticking, I swear to you, it did. For 16 p.m. And in that moment, something inside me broke in a way I didn't know was possible. Not with sound. No Shaw Terran. Just stillness. Like a well gone dry. Henry was gone by then, packed up and disappeared 2 months earlier. Left a note on the fridge that just said, "Don't wait up." I thought I'd seen the worst of it then. Thought nothing could cut deeper than abandonment. But I was wrong. A husband can leave. That's one kind of pain. But your child, your own flesh and blood, talking everything you've ever worked for and walking away like you were never more than an obstacle, Lord have mercy. That's a wound that doesn't bleed. It just aches. Quiet. Constant. I stood there holding that pen, hand shaken, my breath shallow. Why? I asked her. That's all I could manage. Just that one word. She shrugged. Said something about debt and moving on and how I'd had my time. It's just business, Ma, she said, like we were strangers in a courtroom. I signed. I don't know why. Maybe I was too tired to fight. Maybe I still hoped she'd change her mind, look up at me and say, "I'm sorry, Mama." I didn't mean it, but she didn't. She turned and walked out the door, and I swear the wind howled through that hallway like the house itself was crying. What did I lose that day? Not just a house. Not just money. I lost the story I'd told myself all my life, that love was enough. That if you gave your best to someone, they'd never throw you away. I lost the girl who believed in unbreakable bonds. And what replaced her was a woman I didn't recognize, hollow, quiet, lost. But I didn't cry. Not that day. No, the tears came later, in gas station bathrooms and under park benches, when nobody could hear. That day? That day I just stood in my own skin and felt it all sink in. And still, part of me waited by the window that night, just in case she came back. After that day, everything went quiet. Not just the house, though Lord knows that place got real still after the furniture was hauled out and the curtains came down, but me. My mind, my heart, my whole self just slowed. Like the gears had stopped turning and I didn't know how to start them back up again. You think when something awful happens, there's gonna be crying, breaking dishes, screaming into pillows, and maybe for some folks, there is. But for me, it was silence. Heavy as winter snow. Cold, too. The days blurred together after that. I ended up sleeping a few nights in a church basement. Pastor Jimmy let me in through the side door. Didn't ask many questions. Just handed me a blanket and a bowl of soup and said, "You rest now, Sister Edith." Lord bless him. I laid there on that cot, staring at the ceiling, thinking how a whole life could vanish just like that, poof, gone, and nobody'd know but the wind. The world felt different. Sharper. Like the air itself had turned mean. I'd walk past shop windows and see my reflection and not recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were smaller somehow, like they'd folded inward. Her mouth always tight, as if saying too much would break what little strength she had left. I'd always thought of myself as a hopeful person. Kind, steady, faithful. But after Lila, after what she did, I couldn't seem to find that woman anymore. I felt like I was walking around wearing someone else's skin. And let me tell you something, there ain't no loneliness like the kind that comes after betrayal. It's not just the missing of a person. It's the missing of a version of them. The one you thought you knew, the one you loved, the one you built your whole world around. I kept hearing her voice in my head. Little things. I love you, Mama. You make the best biscuits. Promise you'll always be there. And every time those memories came floating in, they were like needles in my chest. I tried not to talk about it. Folks would ask, "Where you living now, Edie?" And I'd smile that tight little smile and say, "Oh, just here and there, talking it easy." Didn't want pity. Didn't want their eyes dropping to the ground. not knowing what to say. So I started saying less, going quiet, slipping into corners. I didn't belong anywhere no more. Not to the town, not to my family, not even to myself. My faith? Well, I'll be honest with you. I stopped praying. For a while, anyhow. Not out of anger, really, just emptiness. I'd sit in church and mouth the hymns, but they didn't mean nothing. I didn't feel the Spirit, didn't feel grace. Just numb, like God had packed up and gone, too. And maybe he did. Or maybe I just couldn't feel him through all the noise in my own head. There was a time I believed people were mostly good. That even when they made mistakes, deep down, they'd do right by you if you loved them enough. But after everything, after losing Henry, and then losing Lila in the worst way a mother can, I started to wonder if maybe I'd been wrong about people all along. That maybe good hearts don't always win. That sometimes the ones you pour the most into are the ones who leave you bone dry. Still, I woke up each day, brushed my teeth, made tea, sat in the park, watched the birds. Life didn't stop, even if I felt like I had. And maybe that's what survival really looks like, not big, brave gestures, but just showing up. Being present in a life that don't feel like yours anymore. I wasn't the same woman who used to hum while she cooked or pressed lavender in books. That woman was gone. But something else had started taking root, quiet, maybe a little bitter, but strong in its own strange way. And sometimes, that's all you can be. Strong and still breathing. It was the scarf that did it. Ain't that funny? Not some lightning strike moment or big sermon or dramatic encounter with fate. No, just a little red knit scarf, left behind on the bus stop bench where I'd been sitting most mornings, sipping weak coffee from a foam cup and watching the world rush past me like I wasn't even there. It was chilly that morning, the kind where your bones remember every year you've lived, and I'd pulled my sweater tight around me when I saw it, soft, worn, with one little snag near the fringe, like it had been caught on a rose bush or a dog's paw. I looked around, nobody close by, and I don't know why, but I picked it up and folded it real gentle, like it meant something. That was the moment. Doesn't seem like much, I know. But when I stood up to carry that scarf into the little library across the street, figuring someone might come looking for it, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Movement. Not in my legs, but in my spirit. Like a tiny engine clicking back to life. Maybe it was the thought that someone might be missing something that mattered to them. Maybe it was just the act of caring about that. Either way, that scarf pulled me out of the stillness, even just a step. The librarian was a younger gal. Well, younger than me, though most folks are now named Jolene. Sweet thing, with round glasses and a voice like morning toast. When I handed her the scarf, she smiled and said, "Oh, that's Mrs. Green's. She's always misplacing things. You're kind to bring it." Then she paused, looked at me a little closer, and said, "You ever think of volunteering here? We could use help with the story hour for the kids. It's just once a week." Now, I hadn't read aloud to anyone since Lila was little, back when she'd curl up under my arm, clutching her stuffed rabbit, and beg, "One more chapter, Mama, please. Lord have mercy." That memory hit like a summer storm, quick and sudden and bittersweet. But I nodded to Jolene. Said I'd think about it. I did more than think. The next Thursday, I showed up. Just a few toddlers and 2 worn copies of Goodnight Moon. But I read like it mattered, like each word was a thread stitching something back together in me. Their little eyes wide, mouth sticky with juice boxes, hands reaching for more stories. It did something to my heart. Not all at once. Not like a sunrise. More like when the frost starts melting off the grass. Quiet. Slow. But sure. 1 week became 2. 2 became a month. And pretty soon, I had a little rhythm again. I started baking muffins for the kids, just like I used to. Jolene said they were a hit, and that maybe I should write the recipe down for the parents. That got me thinking maybe there was still something in me worth sharing. Not money, not property, just warmth, wisdom, a little sweetness in a bitter world. I still missed Lila. Every day. I don't think that'll ever stop. Some kinds of missing just settle into your bones and become part of the way you walk. But I didn't ache quite the same. There was room now, room for other people, other moments, other little joys. And maybe that's what life is after all, a long string of tiny chances to start again. I'd spent so long grieving who I lost, I forgot I hadn't lost myself entirely. That scarf, that silly little thing, reminded me. I could still be useful. I could still show up. I could still love, even if it wasn't the kind of love I'd planned. And I'll tell you what, that was enough to keep me going. I carried that letter with me for 3 years. Crumpled, creased, tucked into the lining of an old purse I never had the heart to throw away. It was the last thing I got from Lila. Just a short note, scribbled, cold, not even signed with love. Take care of yourself, Ma. Don't try to find me. I remember the day it came, no return address, just the ache of her handwriting looking back at me like a stranger. I couldn't bring myself to burn it. Couldn't toss it, neither. So I kept it. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to let go. But today I let it go. It wasn't dramatic. No music swell, no speech to the sky. Just me standing over the little burn barrel behind the library after everyone had gone home, the paper shaken slightly in my hand. The sun was set in, gold and quiet, and the air had that early spring smell like dirt and blossoms and second chances. I looked at that letter one last time, pressed it to my chest like it might still have a heartbeat, and whispered, "I love you, baby." Then I dropped it in, watched the flames catch, curl the edges, and finally turn it to ash. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But what I felt instead was release. Not the kind you scream into the wind, more like taking off shoes that never fit quite right. A soft exhale. A quiet peace. I'd spent so long blaming myself. For Henry leaving. For raising a daughter who could do what she did. For not seeing the signs, not speaking up, not protecting what was mine. But I realize now life ain't a clean story. It's messy and loud and heartbreaking and beautiful, sometimes all in the same day. And people? Lord, people are even messier. We all come into this world carrying our own sorrows, and some of us just never learn how to set them down gently. I used to think that if I could just understand why she did it, I could make peace. But peace don't always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. From saying, yes, it happened. Yes, it hurt. But no, it won't define me anymore. And that's what I chose. To live. Not just survive, not just pass the days like pages in a calendar, but live. I started planting things again. Just little pots at first, basil, daisies, some lavender on the windowsill. I joined the ladies' knitting group, even though my fingers aren't what they used to be. I laughed real, belly-deep laughs at stupid jokes and silly stories told over too sweet tea. I forgave her. Not because she asked me to. Not because she deserved it. But because I needed to. I needed to clear space in my soul for joy to move back in. Bitterness is a heavy coat, and I was tired of wearing it. And I forgave myself, too. For the things I missed. For the ways I broke. For taking so long to come back to life. I still think about her. Wonder where she is. What kind of woman she became. Whether she ever thinks of me when the wind smells like cinnamon or when an old song plays on the radio. I hope she's safe. I hope she's loved. And if she ever comes knocking on my door, well, I'll answer it. I'll listen, but I won't crumble, because I'm not that broken woman anymore. I chose to live, without resentment, without regret, just forward. And let me tell you, darling, it's never too late to choose again. You know, I used to think life was a straight line. You start in one place, work hard, love deep, and if you're good, if you do what you're supposed to, everything lines up like laundry on the line, neat, orderly, and ready to dry in the sun. But I was wrong. Life don't go in a straight line. It loops, it stumbles, it turns back on itself like a creek that forgot where it was heading. And somewhere in all that twistin' and tinnin', we learn who we really are. Not from the good times, no, that's easy, but from what we survive. When I look back now on my marriage, on losing my home, on what Lila did, I don't see it like one long sadness anymore. For a long time, I did. Lord, I did. But now I see it for what it really was, a long road through the woods. Some parts were dark, and I walked it barefoot, cut my feet on sharp regrets. But I kept walking, and I guess that's the lesson if there's one worth sharing. You just keep walking, even when it's slow, even when you don't know where it leads. I used to think love meant holding on with both hands, even when it hurt. I don't believe that no more. Real love, the kind that lasts, it don't strangle. It don't steal your breath. It gives space. It forgives. And sometimes it lets go. Not 'cause you stopped caring, but 'cause you care enough to stop breaking yourself over someone who won't come back right. I've learned you can't make people choose you. Not your husband. Not even your child. And that truth near broke me. But it also freed me. I spent years thinking I failed Lila, that if I'd been better, she wouldn't have turned out the way she did. But honey, you can raise a flower and still have it turn toward another sun. It ain't always your fault where people plant their roots. What matters is who you become after the storm. Not what you lost, but what you kept. And I kept my heart. Bruised, sure. But it still beats for sunrises and kind words and warm biscuits and kids Logan in the library. That's more than I had when I was drowning in sorrow. You don't always get the ending you hoped for, but you can still write a new chapter. It may be quieter than you planned, simpler, but there's beauty in quiet lives too. Peace doesn't shout, it whispers. I found mine in little things, in reading stories to children who don't know my past, in planting lavender just for the scent of it, in sitting on the porch watching birds build nests without needing to understand why they choose one branch over another. And if you're sitting there right now, holding onto something, a pain, a hope, a memory that don't fit anymore, maybe it's time you set it down. Just for a while. Just to see what your hands feel like without it. Maybe you've been waiting for an apology, for someone to come back, for a life that ain't ever gonna look the way you dreamed. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop waiting. Not because you're giving up, but because you're moving on. That's what I did. I chose to stop waiting for someone to give me back the life I lost. I started building one with what I had left. And you know what? It's enough. It's not perfect. It's not what I planned. But it's mine, and that's worth everything. You've sat with me a long while now, and I thank you for that. Really, I do. It's not easy to sit with someone else's heartache, let alone their silence, their old stories, their long pauses between the lines. But here you are, and here I am, two souls meeting across time and maybe space, for just a moment, in this old memory of mine. And I guess I just want to tell you this. This story I shared, it ain't just about the past. It's about now. About what we carry with us even when we think we've left it all behind. About the pieces we try to stitch together, even when the thread's thin and our hands ain't as steady as they used to be. You see, I used to believe stories needed endings. Clean ones. Tied up with bows and wisdom. But life don't work that way, does it? Most days, it's more like a patchwork quilt, a little torn here, a little stained there, beautiful in places and ragged in others, but still warm if you let it be. That's what I hope you carry with you from this, not the sorrow, not even the loss, but the warmth that still rises from a soul that refuses to grow cold. Because no matter what they take from you, no matter who walks away or what you lose, you can still choose to stay soft. You can still choose love. I often wonder about Lila. Not every day anymore, but often enough. Sometimes I catch myself putting 2 sugar cubes in my tea, just like she liked it, or humming that lullaby I used to sing to her when she couldn't sleep. And I wonder, does she remember? Does she ever pause in the middle of her busy life, wherever she is, and feel something stir in her chest? A scent? A song? The sound of wind through the trees? Sometimes I think maybe, just maybe, she does. That somewhere, deep down, she still carries a piece of me, even if she don't know it. And you, maybe you've got your own version of this story tucked away. A person you lost, or loved, or never got to say the right words to. Maybe you've been holding on so tight it's starting to hurt. Or maybe you've let go, but you're afraid to begin again. I don't have all the answers. I've lived long enough to know that wisdom isn't always about knowing what to do. Sometimes, it's just about keeping your heart open when it would be easier to close it. So let me ask you something before I go. What are you still waiting for? An apology? A second chance? The right time to start over? What if this moment, this breath is the right time? What if the story you're living right now is already enough, just as it is? Not perfect, not tidy, but true. Yours. And tell me, do you believe that real love, the kind that digs in deep and doesn't let go, even when it hurts, do you believe it finds its way back? I wonder about that sometimes. About whether love knows how to come home, even after all these years. Whether people can find their way again, not because they have to, but because their hearts remember the way. Sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and the moon spills soft light across the porch, I sit and listen to the wind through the trees. And for just a moment, I feel it like a whisper, like a memory I almost forgot, that maybe, just maybe, she remembers too. And that, darling, is enough to make me smile. Just a little, just enough.